Hi, my name's Mark. I'm one of the pastors here at Trillium. The Trillium Church is located in Old Town Preston, which is part of Cambridge today. Preston itself got started around 1806 or 1807 when a Mr. Erb bought 6,500 acres of land from the Six Nations people. He established a couple of mills, and then artisans and tradesmen gathered around it, and this town started to take shape. By the middle part of the 19th century, there was probably about 1,500 people living here. Then things kind of stagnated a bit and the population decreased. But by 1900 or so, the population had come back to about 2,000 people. Now, in the middle part of the 19th century, 1840s or so, a group of Methodists started meeting in town here. It's Methodist Societies. They didn't have a church, they didn't have a congregation, but they met as Methodist Societies. Methodism came up from the States. John Wesley, who was an English Anglican priest, had started the whole renewal movement called Methodism. It was meant to be a method to come to a new awareness or awakening to the presence of God. He'd had a strange warming of his heart. But when he began this renewal movement within the Anglican Church, the established church and the hierarchy didn't want anything to do with it. And it got kind of forced out the side. And this Methodist denomination, in a very loose sense, started forming. And it migrated up to Canada by the turn of the 19th century, say around 1800, probably even a little bit earlier. And it kind of slowly moved up, came up the Grand River, and in Preston by, say, the 1840s at the latest, there'd be these Methodist groups meeting. In 1861, a Reverend Frazee from Berlin, now Kitchener, comes down and he plants a church congregation by bringing these Methodist groups together to form a congregation. It comes to be known as the Preston Methodist Church. And what's fascinating to me is only a few years later, they build this church building that we're still living in today as kind of the heirs of their spiritual walk. And it says in this little pamphlet in 1875, a spiritual awakening took place and 60 or 70 new members were added. It's just a kind of one-line thing. Wow, but a spiritual awakening took place in this place, maybe not always in the building, but in the community that made up Preston Methodist Church. A spiritual awakening took place, some of it in this very physical space here. Some kind of awakening occurred, some manifestation of God, some kind of expression of the Holy Spirit took place here that caused numbers of people to join with them as a congregation. And it transformed the church, no doubt, as Preston being only 1,500 people at the time. You can imagine that 60 or 70 new members in the congregation would have led to a huge transformation. And it begins with a spiritual awakening, which is almost always how churches grow in truth. Always in different periods of time, churches grow through that spiritual experience of God. And I'd love to know what happened in 1875 that in that spiritual awakening would attract so many people to it. What experience of God did they have? What did they know about the Spirit? What kind of miracles were being expressed through their fellowship together? What kind of blessing was being experienced by people? And we don't know for sure. What we do know is that in the early Methodist Church that there was this opening and openness to the Holy Spirit. And that miracle making was seen as a natural expression of being part of the Church of Jesus Christ. Now, we've been looking at the principles of miracles here at Trillium, and we're looking at the sixth principle, and it's an interesting one because it puts the emphasis on the idea that miracles are natural. When they do not occur, something has gone wrong, which means in most of our churches today, something's gone profoundly wrong because we don't see many miracles in church anymore. I can't think of a miracle that I've heard about that's been experienced in the United Church in a long time. I'm sure they happen, but they're very uncommon and rare experiences. But they're meant to actually be natural experiences, common experiences in our lives. Why? Because the God of love loves us naturally. And where there is love, when there's divine love, holy love, when love's on fire in life, miracles have to follow behind them because they're part of the same reality. For God, there's no big or small, hard or easy in circumstances in life. And when we become the conduits of love, it just flows through us. And we become the blessing of God's hands and heart and eyes in the world. When Reverend Frazee, when he came down in 1861, he experienced this sort of epic moment in a Christian community when he gathered together as a congregation. In 1875, it took on fire and there's a huge expansion. In 2015, We're waiting for a spiritual awakening here too, but we're opening ourselves to it. And I pray that someday someone will write a pamphlet about Trillium and they'll say in 2015, under the pastorate of Reverend Mark Rutledge, there occurred a spiritual awakening and 70 or 80 or 100 new members were added. That is good news.